When Sung family's punching bag, Hwang Dongsoo, kidnapped Jinho to take revenge on Jinwoo for killing his brother, Jinwoo is finding their location like a fierce beast stalking its prey. Thomas Andre also knew that Dongsoo is a scumbag who was taking advantage of his kindness and had pulled this stunt just to give Thomas a reason to fight with Jinwoo. I'm not going to force you to like and subscribe, so first sit down, make yourself comfortable, and enjoy the video. In a warehouse, Dongsoo and two other hunters stand in front of Jinho. One of them asks Dongsoo if it's fine to do this. Dongsoo replies that he's not going to do anything bad to Jinho because he only wants to know one thing. Thomas Andre warned Dongsoo not to mess with Jinwoo, but Dongsoo never planned to do that because there's someone else who can give him the answers he seeks. Dongsoo has decided to let Jinho go if he tells him the truth about what happened to his brother in the dungeon that day. He only wants Jinho to admit that Sung Jinwoo is the one who killed his brother. He punches Jinho in the guts to wake him up. One of the guy wonders if Jinho is a tank-type hunter since he's holding up pretty well. Dongsoo didn't expect Jinho to be so stubborn and keep his mouth shut for this long. Frustrated, Dongsoo grabs Jinho's head and smashes it into the wall, and then tells him that he doesn't plan on killing him. Dongsoo points to the man standing beside him, mentioning that he's a skilled healer. He explains that the healer will patch Jinho up every time he's on the brink of death. In simple terms, unless Jinho says what Dongsoo wants to hear, he's going to keep suffering. Dongsoo also notes that the factory they're in is an abandoned one that's been shut down for 5 years. That means no one is going to hear Jinho's screams. Dongsoo asks if this situation made Jinho want to talk now. Jinho's lips moved slightly, but Dongsoo couldn't make out the words. He leaned in closer, trying to hear what Jinho was saying. In a barely audible whisper, Jinho mustered the strength to respond. He quietly cursed Dongsoo and raised his middle finger. Dongsoo's anger surged as he slammed Jinho's head into the wall. Jinho's body went limp again, completely drained from the relentless torture. A nearby guy reminded Dongsoo to be cautious, not wanting to deal with the consequences of murder, especially over money. Barely acknowledging the warning, Dongsoo replied that he would be mindful of it. Another guy tried to persuade him to stop, saying they had pushed Jinho enough. However, Dongsoo had no intention of stopping. He was just getting started. A sinister smile spread across his face, revealing how much he resembled his equally cruel older brother. But suddenly, something on the far side of the factory caught his eye. His gaze shifted, and he noticed a high orc standing there. Dongsoo wondered if there had been a dungeon break nearby. The high orc was looking scared and was shivering for some reason. They thought it was because of Dongsoo, but in reality, it was because of the king. Dongsoo declared that he didn't have time to waste and threw a powerful punch at the high orc. Just at that movement, the shivering high orc received the command for exchange from his king. Meanwhile in Korea, Jinwoo's mother was wondering how Jinwoo is doing. She seemed a little worried. Beirut, who was hiding in the shadows to guard Jinwoo family on his order, said that if there was something his king Jinwoo couldn't handle, then there is no one in the world who could. As they were watching Jinwoo on TV, Beirut suddenly felt an enormous surge of pressure, sending shivers down his spine. He recognized this intense pressure as he immediately realized that the king is extremely furious. The scene shifts to the Knights Guild, where they were on their regular dungeon raids. Suddenly, Yoontae noticed that Jungsuk's shadow moved slightly, which freaks him out. He told Jungsuk about it, but Jungsuk dismissed it, thinking Yoontae is just drunk. Panicked, Yoontae insisted that he really saw the shadow move, as if it were trembling. Jungsuk, however, assumed that Yoontae was just pretending to be sick to get leave. Scene shifts back to America where Thomas was going to the same location in his car. Suddenly, he told the driver to stop the car immediately, but the driver didn't understand and hesitated to do it. Thomas, however, had already sensed it. He knew that it had already begun. Without hesitation, he kicked the car door open, sending it flying, and rushed out in a hurry. He quickly shouted back to the drivers in the car, telling them to follow as fast as they could. With a powerful leap, Thomas disappeared in an instant, smashing through everything in his path with incredible speed and strength. The hunters in the car joked bitterly about the flood of damage compensation invoices they'd have to deal with, thinking Thomas should have just stayed inside to avoid wrecking the area. Jinwoo's fist connected with Dongsoo's torso, the sheer force creating a shockwave that rippled through the air. The two men standing beside Jinho immediately panicked, unable to comprehend what had just happened. Barely conscious, Jinho managed to look up with relief. A faint smile crossed his face because his brother is here. Blood spewed from Dongsoo's mouth as the punch sent him flying across the factory. His body crashed against the opposite wall with tremendous force, shaking the entire factory. Jinwoo stood firm, His eyes were filled with fury. The air around him thickened with the overwhelming intensity of his anger and aura. Jinwoo carefully took a healing potion from his inventory and gently poured it into Jinho's mouth, hoping to bring his friend back from the brink of death. But suddenly, a notification from the system popped up, reminding him that healing potions could not restore health if it had fallen below 10% of a person's total HP. Frustration boiled inside Jinwoo. He needed another way to save Jinho, but time was running out. Turning his gaze toward the two men nearby, Jinwoo asked if either of them is a healer. He orders them to heal Jinho with a scary look. One of the men, clearly nervous, stammered out an excuse, claiming he didn't understand Korean. Dongsoo, who had just regained his composure after being hit by Jinwoo, spoke up while translating Jinwoo's demand. While introducing himself, Dongsoo remarked that this is his first meeting with Jinwoo, but Jinwoo isn't interested in pleasantries. He ignored Dongsoo and repeated his order to the men, his voice filled with deadly seriousness. This was their last chance. One of the men, who appeared to be the healer, smirked arrogantly, suggesting that Jinwoo should convince his boss Dongsoo first before asking for his help. In a flash, Jinwoo grabbed the healer's head with force and slammed it into the wall with incredible speed. He then shifted his gaze to the other man and asked again if he could use healing magic. The man was terrified. He didn't expect Jinwoo to be here. When Jinwoo repeated the question and the man hesitantly answered no, Jinwoo instantly smashed his head into the floor with tremendous invisible force. Dongsoo walked closer to Jinwoo, his voice filled with anger and suspicion. He confronted Jinwoo and said that he knew Jinwoo was the one who had killed his brother. Jinho, having just regained consciousness, tried to warn Jinwoo. He mentioned that Dongsoo was Hwang Dongsook's younger brother. Jinwoo quickly told Jinho not to speak anymore. Dongsoo demanded Jinwoo to answer whether he was responsible for his brother's death. Jinwoo's gaze grew cold, and instead of giving a direct answer, he told Dongsoo to go and ask his brother himself. Filled with rage, Dongsoo swung his fist at Jinwoo, aiming straight for his face, but Jinwoo easily ducked under the blow and countered with a punch to Dongsoo's stomach. The sheer impact of the punch made Dongsoo cough up blood. Jinwoo's light punch sent Dongsoo flying across the factory. He crashed into the pipes, his body slamming hard against the cold metal as he flew like a bird. Dongsoo struggled to comprehend Jinwoo's overwhelming strength. Before he could recover, Jinwoo was already crouched low, right on top of him. Dongsoo tried to resist and swung his fist, but Jinwoo countered by swinging his claw and smashing the ground with tremendous force. Jinwoo's hand came crashing down on Dongsoo's head, crushing him into the pipes. He then lifted Dongsoo's head, rendering him unable to resist. Without hesitation, Jinwoo started punching Dongsoo. Blood splattered across the floor as Jinwoo's immense strength crushed any remaining resistance from Dongsoo's broken body. Suddenly, with a loud boom, part of the factory's roof collapsed as Thomas Andre landed on the ground like a superhero. His eyes immediately locked onto Jinwoo. Thomas demands Jinwoo to stop. He reminded Dongsoo that he had warned him not to touch Jinwoo, then asked if he is still alive. Jinwoo, still gripping Dongsoo's head, coldly replied that he is, only for now. Hoping to avoid further conflict, Thomas said that if Jinwoo let Dongsoo go, he would overlook what had happened. But Jinwoo shifted his gaze toward Thomas and asked what would happen if he refused. Baring his teeth, Thomas warned that it would no longer be a request, and he will need to use force. Jinwoo smashed Dongsoo one final time, knocking him out, and threw his body aside. Filled with malice, Dongsoo urged Thomas to kill Jinwoo in his place, knowing that Thomas had no choice but to interfere and fight. Jinwoo then turned his attention back to Thomas and simply said, "Fine by me." The tension between Jinwoo and Thomas Andre reached its peak. Thomas, towering with confidence, spoke with authority, questioning whether Jinwoo truly didn't know who he is. But Jinwoo remained unfazed, making it clear that it doesn't matter who Thomas is. Thomas was surprised by Jinwoo's fearlessness, realizing that Jinwoo knew exactly who he is, yet he is still unbothered. After that, we get a glimpse into the past of Thomas Andre. He grew up in a poor immigrant family, surrounded by enemies. He had nothing to his name, but he had been granted a gift from the heavens that set him apart, which is overwhelming violence. His raw power allowed him to dominate anyone who stood in his way. Through countless battles, he honed this ability, proving his strength time to time again. Violence became his justice. Those who opposed him were destroyed, and those who looked down on him were forced to kneel. With strength, authority, and wealth at his command, he lived like a king, where violence was the ultimate power. And now, Thomas knew exactly how to deal with those who refused to submit to him. Stretching his arm toward Jinwoo, Thomas told him to blame his ignorance for what is about to happen. The scene shifted as hunters from the Scavenger Guild rushed to their guildmaster's side. A large number of fully geared hunters were gathered. Suddenly, something came flying from the other side with tremendous force, destroying everything in its path. It was none other than Thomas, who had crossed his arms in defense against Jinwoo's attack. The guild members' voices filled with concern as they called out to Thomas, asking if he was all right. But Thomas simply raised his hand, signaling for silence. His expression was dark, his rage barely contained as he was trying to grasp the situation. Without a word, he stormed back toward the abandoned factory. One of the guild members snapped at the hunters, urging them to gather up and get ready for battle. Meanwhile, Jinwoo summoned his shadow soldiers where Kaisel and Egris appeared at his side. Egris moved carefully, picking up Jinho with great care. Jinwoo ordered Egris to take Jinho to the nearest hospital, ensuring they did everything possible to save him. Egris mounted Kaisel with Jinho, and the two immediately flew into the sky. Thomas's guildmates arrived in full force. Every single elite hunter from the Scavenger Guild, the most powerful guild in the world, were present. They flooded the area ready to fight. Jinwoo responded by summoning his entire shadow army. Darkness spread beneath his feet as his soldiers emerged. They stood behind him like an unstoppable force, ready for his command. And just look at these panels. What a beautiful artwork. Thomas's eyes lit up with delight. For the first time in a long while, he saw an opponent worthy of his strength. The matter with Hwang Dongsoo no longer concerned him. His only focus now was redeeming his pride, and there was only one way to do that: defeating Jinwoo in battle.